All right, good morning, designers. I'm going to be walking you through how to create the background element for your music poster. Now, for this, you're going to be doing a couple different things. One, I want to see a gradient fill. Two, I want to see you working with photographic elements. And basically, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be pulling from multiple sources to create something original. Okay, and then I want to see you using the shape tools in a low contrast color scheme so that they merge with the background. They look like they belong part of it. They don't pop off of it and stand out like normal symbols or text elements. So you're creating a complicated background element with a lot of different things going on. Okay. Now, some of this will be photographic, used from Pixabay, is what I'd like you to use as the source. You could find something on Unsplash. I didn't try searching there. To start off with, though, what you've got going on here is you want to choose it to be print format. There we go. And I want you to choose tabloid. Tabloid is a good poster size at 11 by 17. Gives me some range to print larger or even smaller as needed. And we're going to work with that. Okay, so go ahead and choose that. And you want to name it with your name. And then poster will work fine. If you want to give it poster background for this one so that you're saving in multiple versions, that is good project management, but I'm not requiring it for the assignment as far as what I see turned in. Okay, it should be at 300 ppi or pixels per inch for resolution when you've created it, and you can decide in your own background color contents, but it's probably not going to matter. If you're following my tutorial, you're going to create a gradient that is solid to solid, so it's not going to make a difference. Now, if you decide to keep solid to transparency, the background color will make a difference. Okay, so I'm just going to leave mine white, and I'm going to hit create. Now, from here, I have my palette, I have my artboard, and what I want to do is not use the gradient tool to create my background. What I want to use is the gradient tool down here. So what this does is it creates a new fill layer. This is non-destructive editing. What that means is you can always go back and adjust it later. So right now my gradient is set from red to transparent. And I know it's transparent because of the checkerboard pattern. Now you may want to change any one of these as you're going through. What I would suggest is leave it on either linear or radial at first, so that you get a better sense of what it's doing. I will actually, I'm going to go with radial for this one. Okay, and position it like so. And one thing you can do if you're doing linear is change the angle. With radial, it doesn't matter. Now, to change the actual gradient, okay, what I mean by non-destructive edits too is at any point I can double click right there and pull that back up and change the gradient. So I decide, no, I don't want it red to transparent. Let's go ahead and change it to red to a solid. Now the quickest way to get to a solid is to pull that drop down and choose this one where you see it's going from red to white. We'll now go red to white. Okay, so I've got it going red to white. And you don't really see any difference because it was against a white background to begin with. But if I take and change this from white, so I click on that box right there and change it to yellow-ish. Okay, now you can see that transition happening. If you want to add more colors to your gradient, when you get this handle on the bottom, you can click on it and then do the same thing. Change which color you want to turn it into. And I could add another one if I wanted. And have a whole assortment of colors going on here. Not that I really want that many colors going on, since it's going to be a Cheyenne High School themed Jazz Fest. Let's go ahead and make that a little brighter. And I'm going to pull this blue slider out this way a little more. Maybe take this divider and drag it that way. Apparently I've got something extra going on here, so let's make a darker shade of blue as well. Now these sliders will control like where the blend point happens, and this will control like how far up it is. So if you want it to be a pretty extreme jump from that blue to the yellow, almost a really sharp line, you can pull that really close. If you want it to be faded, the maximum amount, you put it about halfway. The further that is, the more gradual that transition is going to be. All right, so get something you like there. If you want to flip-flop it, you can just click reverse. Actually, I kind of like that reversed like that, so I'm going to leave it this way. And I'm going with the Cheyenne colors, but it's not a requirement. You can go with it however you'd like. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK to this. Now, from here, now I'm going to start thinking about the photographic element. Oh, and just so that you know, sorry, let me bring this back up. When I pull up the gradient, you do see a lot of different options up here. Okay, so I could go ahead and choose one of these. Iridescent doesn't stand out very well. Okay, if you want to work with something like that, that's perfectly fine. The conditions on this are what you want to come up with. And when you get started, you may not stay with what you started out with. Okay, so let's go to there, and actually let's just take and turn this one into a yellow, and there we go. I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay, so from here, oh, actually, I don't want it reversed anymore. I still want the yellow in the middle, just because I kind of like it. All right, so I'm going to say okay to that, and then I'm going to go over to my website, and I'm going to go to Pixabay, Pixabay.com, and I already did a search here for grungy background. Now, I'm going to go through these. Make sure you don't click on the sponsored links up on top. Those all have watermarks on them and everything. But you get plenty of options for different types of grungy background, and you can play around with the terms too. And find something that you like. It needs to be fairly abstract. Don't choose the one with the top secret stamp or something like that. If it has some writing on it, you don't want anything that's going to be really too legible. Okay, you don't want anybody to be trying to stare at it and try to read what it says. You just choose one that you like. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and choose this one that's got a very heavy splatter pattern. And I'm going to open it up larger. Now, when I copy this over, I'm not going to do the save and move it over. I'm just going to hit copy image and drop it in here and Control V to paste. Okay, the resolution is much lower than we want, but for what I'm doing it for, it's not really a detailed element. So the fact that I have to blow it up is not bothering me. Well, because it is landscape and my poster is portrait style, I'm going to go ahead and rotate this. If I hold the shift key, it will still rotate on to 45-degree angles. Okay, and I'm going to make sure this is large enough to fill the space and press enter. Okay, so I have a nice splattery background, but it completely covers and hides that gradient. And I do want it to merge into the background. That's what I'm trying to do, is incorporate my color scheme with this photographic element and create something new and original. So I'm going to choose that, and what I'm going to do is just go over here to the blending modes and start looking around. What do these different blending modes do? Well, dissolve doesn't do anything unless you reduce the opacity. You can play around with that. It creates a very noisy sort of look. That could be something that you want to go with. Okay, but you have to adjust the opacity for that to work. If you want to look at other ones, you can click one and just start moving the arrow down through them until you find one that you like. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do right here. I'm just going to click through, and once something is bringing out that yellow and blue that I chose, but also still using some of this from the background, that is kind of neat. Okay, now it doesn't necessarily need to keep that yellow and blue. Okay, that was just kind of my starting point. That one's kind of cool too. So you choose one that you like, and that's what you're going to go with. Now, if you want, like I'm liking this one, but maybe it's coming out too bright through here, I can click on my gradient again, and if I want to change it, how's that look with linear? All right, that looks all right. How's it look with angle? Ew, that's awful. Reflected, it's okay. That bright spot in the middle, I think, is really reading too loud for me. But kind of like it with the radial, and I'm just going to leave it with that for now. And I've got my starting point. Okay, so I've created, and I could take and play with this even more. I could drop the opacity on, whoops, not on the gradient layer. Make sure I target the correct layer. I could drop the opacity on the layer above it. I could grab another grungy background. And if I do that, you can take a look at what this does. There's this one here that I saw that is very much like a watercolor wash. Okay, so I'm going to copy that image and let's paste that right over the top. Okay, so if I drag this out, okay, you can see it looks very much like brush strokes. I'm going to do that same thing where I'm resizing it this way. Okay, I press enter to confirm, or that little check mark that was up here. And then let's change the blending layer on it. Okay, so if I go with screen, no, that's not going to work. That's too washed out. Okay, but I can look to see what these different, what this additional layer on top does. Kind of like that one, pin light. All right, let me go back up here and I'm going to leave it on pen light. All right, so the overall goal is you're trying to create something that is original, something that stands out. Now, the next thing that I wanted to get into is using the custom shape tool. Now, I've already done some settings on mine that I can't just go and undo, so I'm going to walk you through what I had to do. So if you look over at your toolbar, it's set on the rectangle tool. Now the rectangle tool, you click and hold on it and you'll see other options out here, including the custom shape tool. Now when you first click on this, you have options up here. If you pull that drop down, it'll say leaf, wild animals, boats, and flowers, which maybe you want to work with some of those, maybe you don't. The reason that I really liked the custom shape tool is it had music files. So I've opened up a whole bunch here because I was looking through them. But it's got all this music-oriented objects or shapes that you can create. Okay, so it's more than just creating circles and squares and things like that. You can create custom shapes like this. All right, so in order to access it, what you need to do is you need to click on Window and go down here to Shapes. From that, you've got a hamburger. Over here, you go ahead and click on the hamburger and you get an option for legacy shapes and more. Right? And when I click on that one, let me close that up. It created another one for me, so I need to get rid of that. So I say okay to delete that. And then I have access to all those shapes. So when I come back over to here, I now will have, or you will have, the legacy shapes and more options. So you can look at the shapes from 2019. You can go through and look at the shapes from before that, okay, and choose ones that you like. Now, here's the important thing that I want you to keep in mind. Every time you create a shape in Photoshop, okay, what it does is it creates another layer. You really need to pay attention to your layers panel over here. So if I choose this musical note shape, or the treble clef, what I can do is I hold shift when I create it and it's automatically going to create and fill it with black. While it's still selected like this, I can change the color. Let's make it red. Okay. Now the problem with this is it's high contrast. It stands out. It's got too much pop. Okay. And what you want it to do is merge in with the background. This should just be another background element. Okay. So we've created all this scattered background. We've got all these colors going on, but we want to create something else that is a little bit more grounded, but is going to soften and become part of the background. Well, you can do that this way. You can choose your different blending layers. Multiply didn't really do anything. There we go. As I'm clicking through, you will see them. What happens if I'm clicking off that? There we go. All right, problem with lighten is you lose it entirely. Okay, darken, multiply, and click through. You can start seeing it change up. So there, that one, linear dodge add, is starting to, you can just see it in there. So that's a little too subtle. That one is looking pretty good. Overlay. Soft light's looking pretty good. Okay. You could also play around with the color some more too. So if I go to one like multiply, okay, but I don't want it to be in that red color. Okay, if you choose the black arrow up here, just like you would in Illustrator, because remember, shapes are vectors, just like they are in Illustrator. You use that black arrow to target it, and then I can choose a different color here, or I can go up here to the color picker. And depending on what you choose, okay, you want to choose a color that is going to merge into the background a little bit more. So I want something that's going to be kind of light. Let me click away from it. All right, so that is creating additional shapes. Now I could go in also, and let's go back to that shape tool. The next shape I make will make a new layer. Let's put a flower in here. Let's say I want, I'm going to hold shift to constrain the properties. And use that one to change up its angle and everything, and do the same thing. Let's set it to a different, off of that so I'm not seeing the path. All right, okay, that one's looking kind of cool the way it is, kind of that white over the top of it. Maybe if I can emphasize that, I want it to stand out a little more than it is though. So maybe something like that. Up in that corner there, that flower becomes visible. Whoops. Gotta watch which layer you're clicking. If you have this button checked, if you're on this tool, the move tool, and you're auto select checked, if you don't click on the actual shape you want, it's going to change to the layer of whatever you click. So that could be a problem. All right, let's maybe bring that down some. Position it down here. I'm going to click off of it to see what it looks like. Oh, I'm going to confirm my transformation. All right, so I'm liking that. So play around with it. You want a very complex background. That is going to be phase one.